Yeah, doing a live stream here. I hope we're live, otherwise I'm talking to nobody. But Brady says that the technology is agreeing and that we're indeed live. So thank you guys for dealing with our technical snafus and my tardiness. But we are here 20 minutes tardy, and we are ready to party. Yeah, excited to be here, guys. Today we're going to take a little bit of a sidestep, a little bit of a break from total Shakespeare authorship question stuff, though don't you worry, it is inevitable that we will drag it right back to Shakespeare authorship question, and we will definitely be talking some Sidney, some John Webster amidst all this. But moreover, we want to talk about what people need to be reading to write good fiction. Because we want to give a big shout out to Right Conscious, who is a YouTube channel, and we'll show it later in the video and go more into detail because we want to give a bunch of shout outs here. But today's video is kind of a shout out to him because his whole spiel is that, look, we need to go back to some of the classics, some of the great stuff, and really dive into that to find what we want to say now, because a lot of the literature coming out right now is pretty darn trite, and it's flaccid and just run of the mill, and
it's industrial at some points, because that's what he complains about is like MFA churning out quote unquote writers, but that's not just something that you can just.
And I have personal experience with that, and I'll go into that in this video today and talk about why I am 100 million 10% agreement with Ian over there at Right Conscious. I'm somebody that was like tailor-made to like streamline straight up to MFA greatness, and I totally spurned that path for the exact reasons that he preaches about. But we'll go into that more in the video. We want to go over some of our favorite novels, some of our favorite fiction or non-fiction or quasi-fiction, stuff that makes our heads, tick and gets us writing. I know neither of us are technically published authors, but any of you guys out there that love fiction, love Shakespeare, love art, especially you creators out there, this one's for you guys tonight. But let's start off with some of the shout-outs before we get into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, you already said Right Conscious. Thank you for he gave us a shout out not only in the live stream and had me on and we talked some books and some Shakespeare stuff, and I got to test the waters with some of our theories too. Different people, new people.
Yeah. Exactly.
Some people are interested. Some people are like, you crack pipe smokers, and touche. But
well, I think that's why some of these older hats are a little excited about us, that we may be able to, if we pull the right strings and make the right moves, we may be able to branch this Shakespeare authorship question to a larger audience, and especially shout out to you Right Conscious folks. Shakespeare authorship question will only make you a better writer. I stand by that. Like, the great Shakespeare authorship questioners are literally the great writers of Western English writing civilization.
I love my crack pipe.
Shout out Hyperboy. Thanks for tuning in to another live stream.
Shout out. Yeah, dude. Sharing some Nietzsche quotes with him. So
yeah. You want to give some shout outs to our Patreon members while we're here, because you guys make our world turn around. I'll let you.
We got for first off, our weekly book club member James over at Live By
Young to Live
By.
You want to pull up his YouTube page? Because I want to give a little anecdote about this. James is one of the coolest, nicest, smartest people I've ever met in my life, and that's probably because I've been stuck here in my bubble in Texas, which, I've been outside of Texas, and I've been to smart places in Texas, and I've met smart people, but James is over from across the pond. He's over there in England. I forget, he's told me where he's from, and it's a small little town outside of I'm blanking here. I'm not gonna dox James totally, but James just joined our Patreon. I just thought he was this cool, really smart fanboy that liked our Philip Sidney push.
Of the
But turns out he's famous. 35,000 subscribers. James, you're amazing. I hope you've gotten better from the illness. Can't wait for book club. You've been a rejuvenating light to book club, bringing your different perspectives, both your classical knowledge and your Jungian archetypal sort of lens. Super shout out to you, man.
And medieval fan as well.
Yeah.
And if your doctor is...
Which I assume everyone in England's like that. Like, sorry to stereotype folks, but correct me if I'm wrong. Over here in America, we don't even know what medieval means. We don't know how to pronounce it or spell it.
Middle evil, what is that?
Yeah, middle evil. Like, sounds like terrorism.
And then I was going to say, if your doctor has prescribed you in need of Vril, make sure you go check out Hyperborean Knowledge. He's been doing some interesting topics on a bunch. And if you like Nietzsche talk, definitely go check him out.
Oh, right on. Yeah, shout out Hyperborean. Philip over here, Philip Baltimore, not from Baltimore, has a big shout out for Steve Donahue. He says, that's my booktube guy. He's got a great list of starter kits on all kinds of literature, and he's done a couple on the Shakespeare authorship. So super shout out. Thank you for wrecking that. I've not come across Steve. I will check that out.
Yeah, thanks, man, for the shout out on the Brave New World video. Yeah.
Can we give Salts a shout out?
I think we do that like every time.
Yeah, but can we pull up his page? Because like, guys, like, I'm a big fan
this
of...
guy put a lot of stuff...
I'm a big fan of, like, you know, a good handful of YouTubers, and I love this Shakespeare authorship scene, but this guy's like a god. Like, I just... I don't know.
He's from Texas, so...
Is he really?
I think he's, like, in the Austin area or something.
Of course he is.
Yeah,
like,
dude.
Like, the Lone Star greatness. The excellence. But he is a Nietzsche guy, and his podcasts are largely about Nietzsche, but he does all sorts of podcasts on other philosophers in a sort of comparative study to Nietzsche, usually because Nietzsche himself does that comparative study. But yeah, lots of young stuff. He's the guy that made me and Brady start looking at Aeschylus.
Yep.
And not necessarily wittingly, but everything he said, we're like, wait a second, I've heard that before.
Because it was all in that crazy moment where we realized that he was talking about Aeschylus, and we were like, oh yeah, the Furies. Okay, this is where Sidney was getting it from. And then we were like, well, yeah, what does Nietzsche have to say about Shakespeare? Oh, he compares him to Aeschylus. Oh, okay, interesting. All right, so.
And that is like kicked Brady off and I as well, but especially Brady off onto this like Greek rabbit hole where it's like it's constantly coming back. Philip Sidney, folks. Philip Sidney was, I guess, some kind of Greek god. Okay. Where do you want to go from here?
All right. Well, yeah, we're just gonna go back and forth. Chance brought a whole duffel bag full of books. I was like, yeah, bring some over, you know. And I knew he was gonna bring some, but he's definitely had some. I think he wants to offload onto y'all. And I think,
let me see.
If you're from the Right Conscious Clan, or you're looking for deep cut literature, stuff that's flown under the radar, because we all know Cormac McCarthy, we all know David Foster Wallace, and those are all great reads, and we all know Nabokov, and that's all good stuff. But Chance at some point at one year he was like, let me go look at the 1948 best top novels of that year, and who fell off the map, like who was popular back then and who do we not talk about anymore. And so that kind of got him onto us, some interesting authors, and I've got like a wacky selection of some some literature, but also some bizarre conspiracy books that I want to bring up, because it's sort of like integral to like my work here on the channel and the sort of what I call the post MK Ultra framework, right?
Yeah.
If you're post colonial, if you're post blah 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 blah, I claim post MK Ultra is what I say.
Right.
So, but I guess we'll just go back and forth. I'll start it off, but let's see if I'll just stop. To going back to the Nietzsche stuff, if you want to understand Nietzsche, you want to understand some Shakespeare, if you want to understand some basics of drama and Greek, history, I got this cool little Loeb edition for Christmas for my father. And it's the Aeschylus translation, so it's a dual translation of Agamemnon, the libation bearers, and the Eumenides, and some fragments as well. I just thoroughly enjoyed reading this. I don't know why. I didn't think that I would be into this, because I remember reading, like, Oedipus and stuff like that back in high school. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And, this sounds kind of interesting. I want to check it out. And I don't know, the language is like the imagery and the stuff that they say, and like, I don't know, the blood this and yada yada. And it's like really cool. I think it's really interesting.
I kind of want to say, like, Homer's older than him, Hesiod's older than him, but like Socrates isn't, Plato isn't, Sophocles isn't. He's one of the oldest pieces of Western literature that we have, and he's already like, it's not fully formed modern. It is definitely just people getting out there and doing their dithryms, getting out there and doing their poetic speeches, but like, it's already so close to Shakespeare, and it's the first thing that we have, and it's foundational. And I don't know why I was able to take like 2 or 3 Greek classes, like 1 or 2 drama classes, a bazillion literature classes at 2 different universities, and I don't think I ever had to read Aeschylus.
Yeah, I took a drama class and we definitely read.
I read
Bacchus.
Yeah, Euripides, or not Euripides. Yes, Euripides. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. We definitely read tons of Sophocles. Read Euripides. Read several Aristophanes. But Aeschylus got slept on.
Yeah. And it's like, the concept.
He's before all of them, guys.
And the idea that in Sydney's stuff, when he's naming all the different Greek monsters, and he's like, Chimera, Cyclops, and you're like, yeah, I know those. And then the last one he mentions is the Furies, and you're like, what is that? I did not know what that was until they're, specifically an element in this play.
Yep.
And so, just super interesting. A lot of stuff that you could probably dive out. It's the basis for Hamlet. It's the basis for Amleth. It's the same thing as Osiris, Set, and Horus. It's like the exact same sort of setup here.
Right.
The uncle
and it's
getting with the mom, killing the father, the kid coming up to revenge the father. The whole Lion King story, right?
What's also amazing about it is, it's just totally reinterpreting myth. It's just taking from the Iliad story, right? It's Agamemnon. It's the same historical, mythological figures. So it's not like he's drumming all this stuff up from scratch. He's doing what Shakespeare does. He's taking from the zeitgeist. He's molding it into what, makes sense to people and will hit people. And I pulled out your other copy of the same exact stuff, Aeschylus. I'm glad he put this copy, because I don't have this copy, and I wish I did, because I do have this copy, and it's Robert Fagel's edition. In his translation, some parts are fun and cool, but he gets way too loosey-goosey with the translations.
And some parts, I think he says he gets like deliberately sort of Shakespearean with it, and he includes it in his thing.
And it feels too poetic license,
And like, for instance, when they'll use the word, the something dark angel came down, and they'll use that in English, and it's like, well, I don't think the word dark angel was like in Greek. Like, what word is it? Was it daimon? Like, there's like a whole different context, and I want to be able to access it through that means, so to go find dual translations and see like, what word is it actually being using, and it's daimon. And does it have that sort of dark angel context? I can understand that, but it's still there's still missing layers that it doesn't really carry over that well, in my
opinion.
Too
much modernizing. It's what, to go back to Essential Salts in his Nietzsche videos, it's what Nietzsche says about perspectivalism versus universalism, and Robert Fagels is definitely taking a universalist take on it, where he's modernizing it to say our modernist understanding should universalize with their, previous understanding, whereas something like this is trying to be a little more true to the historical text and make us as the reader force ourselves into trying to fit into their historical perspective through the text itself, rather than allowing us all the modern context that comes with the universalist perspective. No thanks.
The Northman, based on the exact same story.
Yep.
I think I have another book in here that's not. Well, I do have some Viking-related ones, but I have another history book that is relates back to Edgar specifically, so maybe I'll talk about that one next. But yeah, Aeschylus, Greek tragedy in Aeschylus, highly recommend. All right, Chance.
Okay, so what I have in front of me is just a giant pile of novels, mostly from the 20th century. A few of these are short story collections, but I didn't put any, Shakespeare in here. I figure Shakespeare goes without saying. I want to talk about some of the books that I don't get to talk about, but that I've always historically loved, and for all intents and purposes, I got into this stuff before Shakespeare. This stuff is what got me into Shakespeare, and at some point, I figure there's other people out there that have had that path, and I figure these younger people, especially, I doubt most of them will come directly into Shakespeare. We don't have that many adaptations coming out, especially not many adaptations for the youth. And so anybody that's literary, yeah, you're eventually going to get to Shakespeare. You can't avoid it. But these are some of the things that made my literary mind, start turning as a teenager into a 20-year-old into now 30-year-old. And some of these I read a long time ago. Some of these I've read real recently. Some of these I honestly haven't even fully finished. But they've wowed me so much that I've got to talk about them. And you're like, wait, they wowed you so much, but you haven't finished them? And it's like, I want to be able to fully appreciate these things, and if I've got any sort of distractions or side thoughts or other energies, I got to go with that, and I'll come back to these things, and if need be, reread them back. But that said, let me talk about some. The one it starts off with, I didn't bring Catcher in the Rye because all y'all, I assume if you're literary, you've touched Catcher in the Rye, if not read it, and but that was a religious experience for me because I was a disenchanted teenager. But more than that, I was a disenchanted teenager that already kind of thought writing would be a really cool thing and wanted to maybe get into it. And so when I read Catcher in the Rye, it's like, wait, what? You can put that voice into words, and you can turn that into a novel and just riff with this stream of consciousness is this sort of,
and yeah, specifically speaking to the teenage boy situation, but yeah, actually make you guffaw and laugh, or not guffaw, but actually laugh out loud.
Question the world, sort of give word and give lexicon to the state that you've been feeling. That was so powerful to me, and it's like I want to do that, and I'm sure I'm a bajillionth person to feel that way about that book, but that book was super powerful. That said, I didn't bring it just because, I figured everybody's already touched that book, but I wanted to bring up this book, 9 Stories, which is also by J.D. Salinger, because Salinger doesn't have that much output, right? We have Catcher in the Rye. That's his only real novel. We got Franny and Zoe, which is sort of a novel, but it's really some episodes and novellas tied together of these characters that sort of link. We also have Raise High the Roof Beam Carpenters, which is a novella about Buddy Glass, who is the brother of Franny and Zoe, and we also have Seymour, an Introduction, which is a novella about Seymour, who is yet another Glass member of the family, but none of those are full proper novels. And then we have 9 Stories, which are J.D. Salinger's 9 short stories that he published and then bound into book form. That's all we get from Salinger of published material. Supposedly he had tons of other Glass stuff, maybe even had a whole nother family legacy thing, but yeah, he went dark. He went and moved off to the middle of nowhere, Connecticut. We don't get it. But guys, if you want to be a writer, you have to read all 9 of these stories. And particularly, there's all these are powerful. The one that is the most famous is the first one, which is A Perfect Day for a Banana Fish, which is indeed Seymour Glass is the main character from that Glass family stuff. And this is, spoiler alert, it's about a suicide, but check that one out. Another one that's super powerful to me is Teddy, which is about this unbelievably hyper precocious kid on a cruise ship. And then the other one that really grinds my heart up, and you can tell that World War II had a real impact on J.D. Salinger is called For Esme with Love and Squalor, and it sort of prefigures Lolita a little bit, in that we have this army writer guy that comes across these, French people, and some of those French people are these kids going to like choir practice or whatever, and one was this little girl, and he meets her in this cafe, and there's definitely some Lolita vibes about it, but it never goes explicit. That's all subtext. But he has this sort of like, platonic relationship with her, and then long after the war is over, she gets married and writes back to him, and he writes back to her. But it's also dark and terrible, and the pallor of the destitution and destruction of World War II is just constantly hanging over everything, and it's why it's called For Esme with Love and Squalor.
So I read Catcher in the Rye. Yeah, same reaction. Wow, this is great. I feel like this is actually vocalizing something that, it just feels so...
Lord. We're not, blood brothers, but...
we're bros.
Yeah, we're bros. So Brady was childhood best friends with my little brother, but I was always family friends with him, and then in college, my brother went off to A&M and then did a bunch of other stuff, and... me and Brady still keep up with him, and my brother's still cool and all that. But me and Brady have always been around in Houston, and so we've just always linked up together since, I don't know, college and after. And I don't know, we knew each other and were buddies in high school, but it was, just still kind of family friend stuff. But yeah, college, it's like every day we'd try and hang out at UH or after school or that kind of stuff. Early 2000 teens, and from there just writing projects, conspiracy talk, art, and then eventually we lived together for several years, and then Brady moved out to get married and have kids and have his own awesome life, and that's our little story.
Beer pong partners.
Shout out. I'm not too great at the old beer pong. I was in a fraternity, so that's the only reason I'm any sort of decent. But there were guys at my fraternity that were like, like professional beer pong players, and like with their eyes closed, it's true, I can call the cup, bro. And then like nobody else could play beer pong because they'd win every game, and everybody else is like drunk as a skunk. And just like, is that fun for you? Like, I don't know. All right, I digress.
But yeah, is it more? Is 9 Stories more accessible, or like does it carry more of that J.D. Salinger sort of like? Because I tried to go and read Fanny and Raise the Rooftops, and I was like, what is this? Like, this is not Catcher in the Rye. Like, what's going on?
Of all his stuff, the thing that feels the closest to Catcher in the Rye is Raise High the Roof Being Carpenters.
Okay.
These stories feel much more like Seymour and Introduction. These stories feel more like Franny and Zoe. Catcher in the Rye is its own like experimental voice thing, and that may go into some of our pinch-on talk. But for the most part, it's his fiction has much more this 40s like high class kind of feel. Like it's always this kind of not quite satire, but this or polemic, but this sort of deconstruction
Lampoon or something.
Yeah, not even quite lampoon, but deconstruction of 40s high class lifestyle, and I mean even Catcher in the Rye is that, but this stuff feels like it's in the voice of that 40s high class stuff, and so like I too, when I tried to go into other Salinger after Catcher in the Rye, it was like, wait, what? And it was almost a disappointment. But then I came across these stories, and for some reason, like reading one and then reading another and then reading another, it was like, wait, okay. It made me realize Catcher in the Rye is its own kind of thing. This is J.D. Salinger. This is what he sounds like, and take it or leave it for what it is, And he's just so careful. He's so incredibly careful. He's so incredibly subtle. He's super influenced by Chekhov, Hemingway, a little Steinbeck too. but like it's also minimalist, and he totally prefigures Carver, who I've gotten here somewhere. God bless America. All right, Brady, you take over. Next book. I'll find Carver.
I'll check. Oh my lord! $2 for the light of books. We got our first ever super chat from Char Fred. Wow!
Hey, shout out, Fred. Thank you, sir.
Super much. Yeah,
that's awesome, man.
We're only 2 books in, so yeah. Hopefully your wallet's ready for it.
There's Carver. Cool.
Nanya said, "Oh my god, I just got back into reading and tried Gravity's Rainbow. Got like 50 pages in and decided I'll come back later."
Ditto. We're gonna come. Yeah, I got lot 49 here because me and Brady have been able to read this multiple times. Yeah, Gravity's Rainbow. I got 19 pages in and said, yeah, I'm not not that I'm not smart enough. Just that I don't have. And I have a pretty good Wikipedia brain. Like, you know, my students are like, oh, you're Mr. Wikipedia. You can just tell me anything about anything. And, you know, Brady will tell me that stuff. But, like to read Gravity's Rainbow, like, you have to be unbelievably versed in, like, just the last 2 millennia of European history. Like, maybe more than 2 millennia. But, like, all of European history. Like...
Yeah, my first pinch on, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've read Lot 49.
Go do 49,
yeah,
please.
49.
Go read Lot 49, which,
definitely
there's definitely some wiki stuff you're going to have to do, but...
I tried doing Mason and Dixon
thinner,
first. I got, like, 45% of the way through Mason Dixon, and I put it down because I was in the middle of moving, and then just a minute ago, before you came over, I cracked it open, and I was like, let me see what was going on with this.
Dude, you're going to do...
Did I read the...
You're going to do so much better now, though.
Yeah, Gravity's Rainbow also. Talk about not being able to read it. I read the opening tagline of the book, or the opening quote of the book, the Werner von Braun quote. And I was like, I can't read this.
I'm not ready. Which, you know, I don't want that to hurt our ethos too much, because it's not like we're not well read. Honestly, I think a lot of people out there that are like, yeah, Gravity's Rainbow is great. Like, why do you think it's great? Pray tell. Like,
yeah.
And some of the people you read their essays is, oh, okay, I think you got it. But like other people, I think you're just putting that up on your Facebook page to sound smart. But you know, hopefully we're not doing the same here. Okay. While Brady's fixing the stash, here's my Raymond Carver. Raymond Carver, short story writer, tragic death, died too early, all that. But he was kind of the king of minimalism, literary minimalism, especially the American brand of it in the 1970s and 80s. And I personally absolutely loathe minimalism. I find it utterly boring. I find it way too French New Wave. Find it, just like, let's talk about dragons, machine guns, and I'm not even a spectacle guy, but like, please make it interesting. Minimalism, nothing happens. It's all subtext. It's all so much on the reader. What is this? Come on, author. But yet, Raymond, there we go. Raymond Carver is something special. He's kind of a god. He somehow one-ups Hemingway. I don't have any Hemingway in here because, you know, as great as Hemingway is, and he is a master prose stylist, he's not the greatest novelist. If I should have probably brought one of his short story collections. Dragons with mounted machine guns, touche. All right, yeah. But yeah, like at some point, everything that Hemingway does, I can find somebody in this pile that maybe does it a little better than Hemingway. But Hemingway is a god. I don't want to crap on him too much, especially somebody that's a wannabe writer, because you know, all of us Shakespeare guys. Let me drag in Shakespeare for a second. A lot of us Shakespeare authorship questioners love to point to Shakespeare's vocabulary. It's so immense and large compared to his peers of his time. You know, like Shakespeare has like 24,000 words or 22,000 words or something, and the next biggest after him is Drayton with 8,000 and Florio with 6,000 or 7,000.
It makes you wonder though. It's like, would that number change if we actually had Decker's plays, or you know, those missing plays and stuff like that?
Yeah,
but you know, not to digress.
But, right. And people have gone and done it and said, well, look, Ben Jonson actually has highest words per play, but Ben Jonson's plays are also the longest. And that Shakespeare's towards the top of that, but he's not like at the absolute top. There, you know, people like Webster and Johnson. is much or more, right? But we just don't have as many plays from them, right? So, and they're not as long to get the change in the dialect and all that. So I get that. But to bring it back to Hemingway's vocabulary was like 3,000 words.
Right.
Like, any of his novels are working on like what is basically a low IQ amount of vocabulary. And to tell the stories that he does with that incredibly tight vocabulary, that's an immense amount of control. And so Hemingway's whole view of literature was his iceberg theory that you should only give like 10% of the story, and the rest of it, the underlying 90% of it that you can't see, should all be understood through subtext. And that if you're a masterful storyteller, you're able to give people the understanding, but not the full visual, right? But the understanding through subtext of what that other...
It's like, I don't need to make the whole sundae if I just give you the ice cream. You can just, that bananas and chocolate and cherries could be on top of that, but you get what I'm... If I just told you it's a sundae, you get it.
Right. And like...
It does kind of taste like it, even though it's not, I don't know.
Right, yeah, like at some point, like Bertie Bott's jelly beans, but but yeah, Carver is like a master at subtext. Like that's what minimalism requires, right? Like if you're not going to tell much action, it's all going to be about kind of mundane real life stuff. There has to be some sort of philosophical consequence to it. There has to be some import to it. And yeah, Raymond Carver never wrote any novels, I don't think, but go check out his short stories if you're not reading Raymond Carver. I'm sure you guys have heard of Raymond Carver, but go read Raymond Carver. Cathedral, that's his famous one, about the blind guy. It's powerful.
Nanya, I post stuff on Substack. I have a publication, and you can actually add other. If we were to write something on Substack under Apokalupsis, you can even write more than like 2 people wrote this, and I think I could tag you in it. But okay. Yeah, I'm like Brady, Ad, and Ash on Substack, and I also write under Apokalupsis Historia. I've been telling Chance that he needs to get on there and bless the world with his words, but he's getting there. So yeah, I have the links in our description if you want to go. I think I put my Substack thing in there, and I've pretty much just been they're my pre-essays for a lot of the videos, or some of them are just kind of offloading thoughts, but moving along, and I'll give you an easy softball pitch because this is exactly where this is going to go.
Okay.
And I'll relate it back to Roger Eggers because I watched a YouTuber, don't recall his name off the top of my head, some historian guy. He was talking about Roger Eggers, the Witch, okay, because it's got the double V's, so the Witch, super spooky movie, very disturbing. Great film, but he was talking Eggers is definitely reading his Slotkin. So he was pointing at this book called Regeneration Through Violence. First of a trilogy of the mythology of the American West, shows how the attitudes and traditions that shape American culture evolved to the social, psychological anxieties of European settlers struggling in a new world to claim the land and displace the Native Americans. And he used it by comparing a lot of the history with the popular literature of the 17th, 18th and 19th centuries. And yeah, just kind of tracing, the movement of the settlers along with what they're writing about and their conflict with the Indians and how they're, viewing their own sort of psyche against theirs. And, it's honestly, if you read a lot of the, when he shows you the writing, it's super pilgrimy, kind of, I don't know, basic-y, Christian-y, just ha da da, we killed the things, and I don't know. So that's not the interesting part, but more or less, it's just the horrific violence stories that get you.
Right.
There's a war that's called King Philip's War.
I
think that's the name of it, right? Where there's a bunch of colonist people versus Indians again, or something like that. And I want to say that war is started because this is how it's apparently said in this, and I haven't newly converted this book super hard, so a grain of salt, just so to check myself. But apparently, how it started is they would claim that these earliest settlers just thought these Indians were so one with nature, that they were just super adept at living in this super wild way, and they thought that they were able to survive in any sort of environment, and they supposedly kidnapped the chief's baby and then tossed it in a river and to see if it would float or swim or live or whatever. And of course it didn't. And of course the natives got pissed off with them and staged an attack. And this sounds sort of reminiscent of something. The natives attack. They a bunch of pain is sort of felt, via the colonists. A bunch of political fervor is sort of whipped up, and then they go and have a larger army start to stamp out a bunch of the natives for this retaliation for drowning for them also drowning the baby. But
America,
yeah. So yeah, I didn't finish this book, but yeah, there was a lot of that kind of stuff in there. Interesting, and just wondering, just the amount of violence that's in American history, and just I don't know, it's fascinating to kind of read about and just kind of figure out how that backdrop fits into a lot of stuff, and and there's violence in both sides. It is what it is, and so you just got to kind of be real with it. And so, so this book was cited by that YouTuber, and how he thinks that Eggers is definitely reading this sort of stuff and understanding the psychology of the people in that time period, because that's what he's trying to do, and show you how it reflects in their writing of the time period and in the violence that they're enacting, and how it is their westward ho manifest destiny stuff to do all this yada yada yada.
Yep.
And how their conflict with their dichotomy of how come all of our women keep running off and living with Indians, but to lead you off, so I got this for Christmas. Yeah, so like I said, I found this book because I was watching a YouTuber who was reviewing Roger Eggers' The Witch, whatever, okay?
You're right.
Unrelatedly, right as I decided to start reading this, I started reading Warlock by Oakley Hall, who Chance had recommended. Who he found through Pinchon, but right in the foreword of that book, so I'm reading this book, unrelated. I'm like, oh, Chance recommended this book. I'll read this book at the same time. So I'm reading Warlock, and the opening intro by Roger Stone.
Robert Stone.
It starts quoting from Regeneration Through Violence. This book, this other Slotkin book, and I was like, what the heck? So.
Yeah. And real quick before I start talking about Warlock, I want to answer Charfred's question. Have you done any independent John Dee and Shakespeare connection research?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, actually, we have a 4-hour podcast on that. And
a recent interview with John Michael Greer where we talk a lot about John Dee and Shakespeare. But, yeah, specifically, Chance and I have tried super hard, or at least I've tried super hard to... I was super interested in connecting John Dee to Shakespeare somehow, and then Chance found the perfect candidate to do that, essentially, which was Philip Sidney.
Yep.
And so I know David... I wonder if David Richardson has any quotes or thoughts on that connection. But, yeah, we sort of found out that John Dee has an eerily predictive natal horoscope chart for Philip Sidney. They were close friends. Philip Sidney was his private, student, essentially, right?
He basically said Philip Sidney is his best and brightest student he ever taught. And, yeah, his horoscope for Sidney is that Sidney will die on his 31st year, and it'll be through probably a wound of, by bullet or sword, probably in the leg. And but if he doesn't die from that, manages to somehow escape that, he will become the greatest and most famous human being that's ever lived in English history. And Brady and I were like, wait a second. That sounds like exactly how he dies, but that also sounds like he's describing Shakespeare. So what the heck's going on? And he's supposed to have done that back in 1570 for Philip Sidney's 16th birthday. So that's supposed to be a legitimate horoscope. And Brady, from there, Brady's like, okay, there's a lot of D to look into. And we got a 4-hour podcast on it. Won't go into it too much today. But yeah, thanks for asking that. Shout out. Okay. Let me talk about Warlock. I could talk about this for a million years. If I could only talk about one book on this table or on all these shelves, this might be it. Came into it because Thomas Pynchon had talked about it. Said it was a really influential novel for him. Found some people on Goodreads talking about it. It's got a really high rating on Goodreads, which is a rare thing for one of these old 1950s authors. And I'm a Western fan, so I went ahead and just bought the novel on a random, perchance. Okay, let me check it out. Let me check out some of these deeper cuts. It's the best goddamn novel I've ever read, guys. The immersion, the perfect, beautiful, unbelievable, perfectly American blend of romanticism and realism. Every author dreams of hitting this perfect middle ground, and somehow Oakley Hall not only hits that, but he's able to have these unbelievably deep political discussions. It's all allegorical at the same time. There's psychological import. It's lyrical. These characters are so fully realized. There's so many discussions. There's no easy resolution. Yet it's so iconic. Just please check this story out, because what it is he took the Tombstone Wyatt Earp story and he completely fictionalized it. And so instead of being set in Tombstone, Arizona, it's set in Warlock. Instead of it being about Wyatt Earp, it's about Clay Blaisdell. And lest you're afraid that it's too much one-to-one, such that you can just, okay, why didn't he use these names? No, it's not so perfectly one-to-one. There's other conflicts that are woven into this that were not part of Tombstone, that are still endemic and representative of this Western 19th century American struggle. And I don't know, it's also perfectly woven together in these 3 acts, if you will, because it's set in 3 parts. That's how he does all his books. Oakley Hall himself was a big-time lit professor and was a mentor to a lot of famous writers now, like Anne Rice and Michael Chabon and stuff like that.
And definitely Pynchon was making an Oakley Hall club at his university writers, supposedly.
As I said, the introduction's done by Robert Stone, who I did go ahead and throw a book into the stack. His novels aren't like maybe as world-changing as some of these other novels, but he's such a powerful, talented writer. And this is probably my favorite of his. It's called Hall of Mirrors. It's maybe his first, maybe it's his debut novel. Dog Soldiers is his more famous one. That's also a cool one. I'm a super fan of, 60s and 70s paranoia and, nom stories and drug stuff and CIA, and that's kind of Robert Stone's bread and butter, but he does it at this hyper-literary level. And I don't know. Watching him flex on Hall of Mirrors is a ton of fun. He was also a Texas State professor, and I didn't know that, and I didn't really know who he was back when I went to college, but I could have had him as a professor, and I didn't have him. So, damn it, I thought Texas State was the dumb kid party school. Turns out one of the legends was there.
But yeah, Warlock by Oakley Hall. What a novel. What a title name, too. Nothing really beats that for me. I feel like it already won before it even before I even opened the pages with that sort of title.
It's not to say his other books aren't any good. He doesn't have that many novels. He has sort of a loose Western trilogy, with Warlock being the first, Badlands being the second, and Apaches being the third. Both Badlands and Apaches are awesome as well, especially Apaches. I feel like that may be even better than Warlock, but sorry. Warlock was the formative one that changed me, so that's why I put that in the stack. You want me to do another, or you want to go?
I'm ready. So this is one that... Let me see which one it is here. We're doing it.
Shakespeare's down. He's back. Save these. Oh, no, Shakespeare, don't do it.
All right.
We got too many books.
Yeah, we got a little overzealous here with our book selection. Okay. So, this is one I read a long time ago, but I still left it up on my channel for posterity. And it's a live stream I did, and this is kind of going to weave into it. This is called The Devil's Chessboard, and this is not a fictional book, but it kind of just once again plays into a lot of the channel's framework, and also a lot of other videos I've actually done on this channel, so I'll say that this sort of counts. But this is just all about the second CIA director, Allen Dulles, and the sort of infamy surrounding him, anywhere regards to all the coups that he's involved with, the crazy stuff involving MK Ultra, that are the mind control experiments. I sort of led that off at the top of the podcast here, sort of explaining the post MK Ultra framework.
It's a dark place, guys, but it's a real place, you know.
And yeah, the Dulles family kind of stuck out to me because, you know, we're from Houston, but there's a set of schools near us that Chance and I grew up. We didn't go to this set of schools. I guess Chance actually taught there one point. But it's named after Allen Dulles' older brother, John Foster Dulles,
who was Secretary of State for
Eisenhower.
Yep.
And so, but yeah, they were both blue bloods from the East Coast. We're talking about how they're unelected delegates who get to go to the Versailles Treaty after World War I, and they get to write a bunch of legislation that no one voted for them to go, and somehow they get to go with Uncle Bert, aka Robert Lansing, who is Secretary of State for Woodrow Wilson, who is actually their Princeton professor. But you just see how this like wicked deep state web of all these people, and that it's an intermingling, and like
what I talk about when I talk about the sprawl, Marty.
Yeah, there you go. And so, but yeah, Allen Dulles specifically is a wild, wacky character. You get involved with some JFK conspiracies too, because he's the one who's fired for the Bay of Pigs infamy, and he did not like, you know, JFK famously, that they did not get along, and you know, hence, you know, all that sort of stuff. And David Talbot thinks that, you know, Allen Dulles is definitely involved with, you know, the element that doesn't like JFK at all or whatever going on. So that's sort of like an interesting take on all that stuff. We just had Martin Luther King Day. I would pull down that book as well, but that's sort of related as well in a little bit sense. But if you look on my channel, look at the live streams. I think it's a live stream that I did one time, and I was refuting Michael Shermer, who is a skeptic, and it was him when he was him and Joe Rogan, and I was using a lot of help from this book and other sources that I learned from this one specifically to kind of refute Michael Shermer, who was trying to refute JFK conspiracies the whole time, and like, no, it's just Gerald Posner's book, and then I just show you. And then there was a clip
Michael Shermer's the worst.
There's a clip where it's David Talbot versus Gerald Posner, and they're arguing about JFK conspiracy stuff, but the questions that David was not able to answer, I could see in real time, like, that's a good question, like, I don't know it. He solves it in this book, like, all this stuff that he didn't understand about Lee Harvey Oswald, he'll find it through Allen Dulles, essentially. Allen Dulles is a crazy, wacky character, and there's a YouTube clip of a lady named Mary Bancroft, and she is listed, you'll find her reminiscing about being Carl Jung's patient, and she'll say that Carl Jung got her, that was her. She's like some other blue blood who was a spy during World War II or something like that. But she was a patient of Jung, and she was talking about her her trials with him or whatever, clinicians with him, and she would say, but she was also the mistress of Allen Dulles. As well, and it was famously said that Carl Jung was able to analyze Hitler, and he could tell you everything about Hitler, but he was like, Allen Dulles, like, I can't analyze Allen Dulles. So yeah, Jung had Hitler down to a T. He's like, this is what going on with Hitler, I can analyze him. Allen Dulles, like, dude, that dude's like, impervious
to psychoanalysis.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so yeah, the Devil's Chessboard. Go look up anything about Allen Dulles. This is a dude I could talk about forever, just because of MK Ultra, and he's the one who signed off on it. Just a crazy, crazy person to look up a lot of crazy stuff. So, seminal book as far as my understanding of a lot of things. And I bet some other people have been like, well, there's like some problems with it and yada yada, but I don't know. There's still so many good rabbit holes to go down from this that I don't think you can really go wrong in some cases. So,
okay. I guess on that. Let's see, Martin Drew. Nanya says, I met Shermer once. Wow. How was he nice? I figure he's nice. Just doesn't seem too bright.
Kermit Roosevelt. It was involved with the coup in Iran, I want to say, in the 50s. If I'm thinking about it correctly. That's, with Mossadegh. Kermit Roosevelt, literally being the grandson of Teddy Roosevelt, was an operative for the...
Who is the total influence for...
Badlands?
Yeah, for Oakley Hall's loose sequel to Warlock, Badlands. It's all about Andrew Livingston, which is a fictionalization of Teddy Roosevelt. Sorry to keep all this world small and connected in a nice conspiratorial fashion. There we go.
Badlands by Oakley Hall.
Thank you, Brady. Shout out. We need to dive into some of these deeper cut figures, and I don't know, like I've mentioned, FDR digging up Oak Island, like that's weird. But
I totally forgot about that. Back to Shakespeare, baby.
As far as 60s paranoia goes, just wanted to give some shout outs to some of my favorites. Already mentioned Lot 49, which I'm rereading currently at the moment. For some of me and Brady's own video projects that we want to do. Maybe one of my absolute favorites, which, Lot 49 is totally one of my absolute favorites, but this one was super formative for me, Fear and Loathing. I saw the movie back as a teenager or something. I was like, oh, that movie's funny. Drugs are funny. But no, drugs are funny. Like, they're so funny. They're the funniest thing. And Hunter S. Thompson makes that so entirely clear, and it's not just that drugs are funny either. It's that somehow through drugs are funny, we get to the profound implication of what a historical movement does or doesn't look like. And he's, in 1972, taking this very real lens and looking at what the Summer of Love in 1967 was, while wading through 1972 and realizing there's this vast change in the zeitgeist, that some movement has changed, some energy is gone, and not to too much romanticize the 60s, but to say that when there is some actual like movement going, like that is that's the height of humanity, right? And I don't know, like I have so many qualms with the movie Forrest Gump, but that moment when Jenny's like, I'm going to San Francisco, and they start playing the Scott McKenzie, and she gets on the bus. It's like, dude, what am I doing here in 2025? Why am I not in 1967 getting on that bus going to San Francisco? Like, are you going? Like, I wish. Like, I can't get there. But I digress. This book is somehow breathtakingly funny and profound, and what this man can do with a sentence is only paralleled by a few of these writers in here, including Thomas Pynchon. They can just take you all sorts of places with a sentence, and I don't know, I love it. The other one I want to mention from 60s Paranoia, Kurt Vonnegut's Cat's Cradle. If I could mention any Vonnegut, I think this is the one I want to mention, even over Slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
Harrison Bergeron's its own like brilliant thing, but that's still, I think, rooted in the world of Orwell, Huxley, and Bradbury, and he doesn't get to his full Vonnegut, flexing until books like Cat's Cradle and Slaughterhouse. But I think Cat's Cradle is really where you see the mind of Vonnegut most at work. But I also want to give Vonnegut a shout out for his lecture on the shapes of stories. I think that's one of the most profound things, and he has a whole thing about how Hamlet defies his own analysis on the shapes of stories. Because basically what he does is he's like, look, there's only 8 stories out there. Every story can go on one of these 8 plot points where, we got the regular story where we got regular Joe Schmo who starts in the middle of the plot, and then something really good happens, and he's king of the world, and then wait, there's problems with it, and then now things are getting bad, and he's actually worse off than when he started, and he wishes life could go back to how it was. And then it does go back to where it was, but he's rewarded for his troubles, and he's a little better off than where he started, right? So, like, I don't know. I think of the really bad 90s movie Blank Check when I think of that plot structure. Just normal kid, finds Blank Check, then, oh, no, got all these guys that want to kill me, and I just wish I could be a kid again. And then he goes back, and he gets to keep some of the stuff. Okay, story's over. That's one story structure. Another story structure is, Cinderella, where her mom's her mom's dead. She has to clean everything. Evil sisters, treat like a piece of shit. So already started off low, and then can't really get any worse, and it's just going on low. And then boom, fairy godmother happens, and then way at the top, but then oh crap, midnight happens, and then way at the bottom, and then wait, something happens to bring her back to off-scale happiness. And so that's your basic, Disney princess story structure, right? But Hamlet, I won't go through all 8 story structures. You can go YouTube this, but Hamlet starts off kind of, I don't know, his dad dies, so it's bad, but like he doesn't seem like sad about it or anything. It's just this ghost comes here, and is the ghost coming here a real thing or not? Is it a good or bad I don't know. Let's just put it in the middle. And then as it goes on, is Hamlet like, you know, does he foil Claudio with the play within the play, or does it backfire on him, or I don't know. We can't really tell what happens. I don't know. And he kills Polonius. That's a terrible thing, but wait, Polonius sucks, so maybe it's a good thing. I don't know, just put it in the middle. And he's in love with Ophelia, but then she runs off to a nunnery, so that's a bad thing. But I don't know. He didn't really. He kind of wanted her to run away because he wanted to focus on revenge, so it's a good thing, but it's not a good. Just put it in the middle, and then everybody dies at the end, so that's a bad thing. But wait, we wanted some of these people to die, so I don't know. Just put it in the middle, and then the start of Vonnegut's whole lecture is that a straight line is the worst story in the world. Like, you go read some like Mesopotamian myth, or you go read some Native American myth from 1400 AD or something. It's flat. It's just they found the beans. The beans turned into the sun, and the sun gave light, and the light gave food, and it's just this kind of causal one to the next. It's horrible storytelling, right? We as modern people have developed storytelling techniques. God bless storytelling. Oof. Pick a different book, Chance. No, not that one. Not that one. Call of the Wild. There we go. Storytelling techniques. Yet Shakespeare gets to do this horrible storytelling technique where he does it flat across the bill. Yet we call him the greatest writer ever. What's the fucking deal with that? Like, how do you say, wait, he writes just like the worst storytellers ever, he must be the greatest? Like, is that a troll job? What is that? Like, what do we mean? Well, no, what Shakespeare's doing is every other story, we say, oh, that's a good thing, so we put it here. Or that's a bad thing, so we put it here. And we feel that movement. With Shakespeare, it's not that there's no good or bad things. It's that there's constant good or bad things, and we don't really know how to always gauge them. Some of those things are so complex. We ourselves are like, not just because we're distanced from 1600s English, but people in the 1600s would be like, I don't know how I feel about that. And at some point, what Shakespeare shows us is that we ourselves don't even always know what to make of life. We don't always know what the good or bad thing is. And to have a full enough context to fully judge every good or bad thing in the world, you'd have to be some kind of master god. Yet Shakespeare, and so, yeah, I don't know. I've always thought that was like one of the coolest analysis I've ever heard. Like, that alone would make Vonnegut a god for me. But yeah,
Cat's Cradle specifically also because it's got a little of his own brother's biography, who was basically a mad scientist for GE. So
he's got a little bit of that Huxley in him too.
Basically, because his brother, like I said, is basically the concept for the scientist guy who makes the Ice 9.
Okay.
Very detached, very just left-brained, super hyper engineer guy or whatever.
Right.
And lost humanity, made something crazy, or people who could definitely use those people because they know that they just want to tinker and do their little engineering and toying with and stuff like that, and so. His brother was also, I think, involved with that. GE, I'm pretty sure they were the ones who got in trouble for like seeding some hurricanes in the 50s, and it like hit Georgia or something like that. Yep. And there's like newspapers, and I think his brother was like the one involved with some of that stuff.
Some of the most powerful hurricanes in history, I believe. Pretty sure, yeah. All right, I'll give it back to Brady 1 second. While we're on the 60s paranoia tangent. I brought Ken Casey's Sometimes a Great Notion, but I should probably first bring up One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest. I didn't bring that because I just didn't want to fill the duffel bag to the brim. But One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest is probably, the 60s paranoia novel. It somehow prefigures the 60s paranoia because I think it comes out in 63 or 4 or 5. Like, shouldn't be coming out before all the drugs. Like, how is that coming out before all the drugs? But we got to remember, King Casey is part of the drugs. He is part of the electric Kool-Aid acid test that is going around California and giving out acid to people for the first time. He's the ringleader. He's the guy. He's totally CIA connected. He's the head of this group called the Merry Pranksters. Homeboy was part of it. Robert Hunter, who was one of the lyricists for the Grateful Dead. Tom Wolfe, who wrote the novel Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, which was really more a memoir about the situation. But as much as, that spooktastic, scary, I should not touch this with a 10-foot pole, King Casey's a god. And I could go into a whole, maybe authorship thing that touches on Pynchon, that it's weird that both King Casey and Pynchon have super similar output, where they each have their early novel or novels that put them totally on the scene in the early 60s. Then they have their gigantic follow-up monstrosity in the early 70s, and then they both go dark until the 90s. And I think that's really bizarre and weird, and I haven't totally wrapped my mind around that. But there's a conspiracy there. I assure you. I know that makes me sound wacky. But that said, sometimes a great notion. I had a professor at UH, Dr. Shirley Zivley. She was my Milton professor. I think she's passed away, God rest her soul. She was an older lady. But she was brilliant, super sharp, and she knew her Milton like the back of her hand. But she said the greatest novel ever written was King Casey, Sometimes a Great Notion. And I always was, put that in the back of my pocket. Like, okay, this lady, she knows her stuff, so maybe she's not, maybe she's not singing Dixie here. Maybe there's some actual merit to that statement. And there absolutely is. This is earth-shatteringly good. The power and command that this guy has with language, with storytelling, with knowledge of literature. It's it's knee-buckling, guys. It's if you want to write, you just go read King Casey. Like, please just go read King Casey's One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest and Sometimes a Great Notion. But this one's a little less 60s paranoia. We're into the 70s. He's starting to even prefigure the later domestic suburban family drama of the later 70s. But it's an epic family drama, but it's also a coming-of-age novel. It's also allegory for all sorts of political stuff. But it does have some touch of that 60s paranoia. So,
Charfred asks, can someone help me remember which Shakespearean play has that Freemasonic ritual where the protagonist reads off a letter, follows instructions, then turn in place as he reads it?
That's an excellent trivia question.
I'm doing it again. I don't know if David's still in the chat. I feel like he would remember that.
David can answer that. Dang. We'll answer that in the comments later. I'll definitely ask David in the Discord and put that in the comments later. So come check out the video later.
Yeah, thank you.
Definitely put me on the spot there with that. I may pop in later in the video. Oh, so blah blah blah.
Well, moving on, continuing the paranoia aspect. This book by Theodore Roszak called Flicker. Really weird book. I wasn't really sure what to expect when I first got into it, but Philip says that was Taming of the Shrew.
Thank you. Yes, you the man, Phil.
But Flicker by Theodore Roszak is a very much. This one comes out in the 80s, and it's
early 90s, I think.
And it's like a kind of an Pynchonian type novel. It even gets sort of compared that an epic meditation on the potential evil lurking within movies, written on a scale so vast and paranoid that one can imagine Pynchon bowed over, choking with laughter after reading the final page. This book is sort of like in a Pynchon sort of type fashion, the way it's written, but it's all about the subliminal capabilities of movies and how they imprint themselves, and it's not explicit about that. It's not like this,
But that's the underlying theme.
The underlying theme of like how it does that to us, and there's a lot about Gnosticism in here. A lot of going into like the Cathars, and weird occult history, and in that sort of sense, and very much a big take on like binary and like duality and good and evil, because they'll say that motion pictures are still nothing more than flashing, on and off pictures, so it is still, it's not, nothing is ever fluid. It's all just oscillating between two polarities or something. And that, a lot of conversation about Steve that. Stuff. And no, it's a really fascinating novel. It's funny. Flicker by Theodore Rozek. I haven't read met anyone who's ever read this, so yeah, go read it so I can have someone to talk about it with.
Philip says, just kidding, I never heard of that. Damn, Philip.
That's too funny.
Is it Taming the Shrew?
No clue.
Yeah, David could totally answer that question. Okay, let me see. Well, this is a guy that is slept on. So some of these guys you've probably heard of before, but this is a guy that was huge in his time. In the 1930s, this guy was bigger than Hemingway, Steinbeck, or Faulkner. His name is Erskine Caldwell. You ever heard of him? Erskine Caldwell? No, nobody's ever heard of him. But I heard that he was big in the 30s, and I was like, all right, what? And it wasn't just that he was popular. He was well thought of. People thought this guy knew how to write novels. And then at some point in the 40s and 50s, he kind of faded out. People like Fitzgerald became the name of the era to hold on to. Because, in the 30s, Fitzgerald's not really that big a deal. Fitzgerald, it's because of Gatsby, through time, that Fitzgerald becomes a big deal. Not unlike Shakespeare. But Caldwell was a big deal in the 30s and into the 40s and even in the 50s. But like into the 60s stuff, people, no Erskine. And I think that's a darn crying shame because apparently dude was a little bit of an elitist and a racist and, one of these awful Southern dudes. And maybe it does show in the literature. But it's damn fine literature, guys. It really is. It's the darkest... This particular novel, Tobacco Road, not absolutely all of his stuff, but his stuff is all dark. But it's like as dark as it gets. And it's as satirically, sardonically dark when I say it like that. It's beyond Nash, Marston dark. It's, let me just give you the opening of the novel. Okay, the opening of the novel is this bumfuck idiot 30-year-old guy that he's one of the only guys in town that has a job, and his job is pulling a train car lever, and that's what he does all day. And he's coming home from his train car lever job, which he gets paid in turnips, and he's hauling his bag of turnips, and he's going past the fence of one of his neighbors. And he sees the neighbor out in the yard, and he starts skittering past because, oh, no, I don't want my neighbor to see me because he'll steal my turnips. But then he waits, and he pauses, and he's like, wait, I got to talk to my neighbor. And it turns out his neighbor is his father-in-law. And he's like, okay, I got to talk to my father-in-law, but I really don't want to because I know he's going to steal my turnips. And it's like, what kind of father-in-law do you got? And so he starts talking to his father-in-law, and sure enough, that father-in-law, first thing, he's, what can I do to get them turnips, boy? And God bless this guy. And so, why is he talking to the father-in-law? Well, because he needs his father-in-law's advice for how to get his wife to sleep with him, because he's been married for darn 6 months near, and his wife just won't sleep with him. But it's like, how do you bring that up with your father-in-law? But he brings it up willy-nilly with his father-in-law, and his father-in-law is like, look, buddy, I'll tell you how to do it if you give me some of them damn turnips. And then he's like, God damn it, now I'm going to have to give him these turnips. But sure enough, I'll give him these turnips. And then he gives him the turnips, and the father-in-law gives him some ho-hum schmuck advice. And he's like, what the hell is that? And he's like, look, buddy, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what's going on in the mind of 12-year-old girls. And it's like, that's the punchline to chapter 1, is that, this 30-year-old bumfuck idiot is married to a 12-year-old girl who his conflict is that his 12-year-old wife won't sleep with him. So if this is too dark for you guys, don't go there. But that's, like I said, that's the opening chapter, and it only gets darker. The finale with Grandma at the end. Folks, go check out Tobacco Road. And if you can't handle that quite that much darkness, go check out his God's Little Acre. My mom has that copy right now, so I couldn't bring it with me. God's Little Acre is a little more down. Yeah, thank you. A little more down the road. But it is still incredibly dark. But maybe there's a little heart at the end where this one may just be all, biting darkness. But while we're talking about that, he is an unbelievably big influence on maybe one of my absolute favorite writers, who is Jim Thompson, who is known to be the darkest of all writers. I brought Heed the Thunder. There's plenty of other ones I could have brought. In fact, I may have also brought Population 1280. The Killer Inside Me is his most famous one. That's also one of my favorites of his. He's most famous for doing crime novels, because that's all his novels. He did Hell of a Woman's another great one. One of the closing paragraphs of that novel, where he manages to make a character literally dissociate in real time through the prose. Like, wait, you can do that? Like, how did you do that? Why are you doing that in some fucking dime novel, crime novel? If you can write like that, why are you not just getting the Nobel Prize? I don't know. That's a question that bears answering at some point in our lives. Why Jim Thompson decided to just turn into this pulp crime novel guy, which are uber literary for what they are, but
he did write a screenplay with Stanley Kubrick for The Killing, I guess.
Yep. And Paths of Glory, which
really?
is to me still the heights of World War I movies. Shout out to Gallipoli too, though. I think Gallipoli is very influenced by Paths of Glory. But Heed the Thunder is Jim Thompson's only like real literary novel attempt, but it's brilliant. It's one of his first novels from the 40s. It's like a dark take on the family drama. It's a family from turn of the century Nebraska, kind of sprawling epic. And it's just shockingly good. So yeah, all in the darkness there with Thompson. Stephen King is super influenced by Jim Thompson. Stanley Kubrick super influenced by Jim Thompson. There's other writers that I could probably draw to mind that are influenced by Jim Thompson. But yeah, if you're any sort of a crime noir person and you haven't touched Jim Thompson,
Jim Thompson, oh my god,
he's funny.
It's really so funny. Man, I don't know where to even begin with him. Yeah, 1280 was the one that I read first, and I blew through that. It was just a real page turner.
There's one specific part I cannot read it aloud. We will get our channel will get canceled.
Get droned.
Yeah. We'll get hate mail. But there's a section in Population 1280 where you're laughing and you're laughing and you're laughing, and then it gets so dark. And you're laughing because it's getting darker, and then it gets to this darkness that you swallow your whole tongue. You sit in the pit of your stomach, and you start crying a little bit. But part of you, there's this little infinitesimal part of you that's still laughing, and it's still laughing, and it's laughing at you, and it's Jim Thompson that's inside you laughing at you, and If you're weak of stomach, you put the book down and pour gasoline on it, and you light it with a match. If you're strong of stomach, like Nietzsche says, I don't think that's an actual Nietzsche quote, but if you're of that fortitude where you can get through the darkness, the reward, next.
Yeah, what a great novel. Population 1280. That's definitely honorary mention. Yeah, none in my stack. All right, let me see which one am I going to really pull up next. Yeah, if I'm going to stick with novels here, I think I've probably talked about this on the channel before. This is just going to go off in a really different tangent here, and I'll go on to a rant here, because I've seen, I've followed some booktubers. I followed the people that, I like fantasy. I don't like every single fantasy that's ever written. I couldn't get into, Robert Jordan, but
I liked Robert Jordan.
I got
it's the one fantasy I did.
I read the first one. It was fine or whatever, but
I only read through the first 4.
So much of the tropes, about get the magic sword and all this sort of stuff, and these world-ending conflicts, sort of.
It's also conventional.
Yeah, and it's kind of taking all the wrong lessons from some of the stuff about Lord of the Rings and these other Star Wars properties, and in the just full steam ahead with all those tropes. And so The Wizard Knight, this is actually 2 novels in one, basically. They actually came out in 2 separate books, but this edition just has it all stuck together. The Wizard Knight by Gene Wolfe. He's actually more known for his sci-fi books called The Book of the New Sun and Book of the New Earth. Those are the names.
Okay.
And yeah, they're very much like a postmodern literary sci-fi take on. It's almost like a medieval version of sci-fi where it's like so post-apocalyptic in a sci-fi world. It's like become medieval with all the leftover stuff lying around.
Yeah.
But the Wizard Knight, this one came out. This is like his last novel to come out, and it's a mishmash of Arthurian legend, like Norse stuff, and maybe like one other thing. But yeah, it's kind of taken all those elements and like literally put them together. And I don't know, it's like, yeah, boy he's like from our world and then he gets transported to this world, but it's like all very vague about how he gets there, and he's like sort of, in a fugue about how it sort of happens. So it's very dreamlike a lot of the time and how it kind of happens. But yeah, he all of a sudden gets this body that he's like He-Man, so he just becomes like instant strong.
Yeah.
But it's like this whole sort of dialogue about, yeah, you can even get all this power, but like there's even still more to even having the power in of itself, so he has to kind of like grow up really quickly. And like, I don't know, there's the epic moments in here is not just like him going and like, pulling the sword out of the stone and like saying this dragon thing. There's all this build up to these other emotional payoffs that are much more quote unquote lower stakes in a sense. It's not like his, him versus some giant monster. Like, yes, he will fight a dragon. There's other stuff going on, but like these other moments that you're just like, whoa, like wow, like that's like really captivating. How you all this, there's all this fantasy elements, there's all this sort of world building stuff that we think that we all want from this stuff, that you think that's what's gonna make this great fantasy book, is that you went hardcore like Tolkien and made this
entire world
page and like. You're not Tolkien. Like Tolkien, that's all he did. Like you're not this person who thinks that they're doing that. This person, like, that's why it became so realized, because he's a philologist professionally. Like, yes, it all makes sense. And so, like, I don't know. It's like this already uses pre-established names, and like I said, it's nothing but literally reusing Mythgarthers for Midgard. And like although there's a weird name that also came up, Garseg. I found is the name of a dragon that might be related to some super old English name. I totally forgot where I'm going to go with that. But I don't know. Yeah, what an interesting book. This is like stayed on my mind ever since I read this. I've like loved this book, and I don't know. It's fantasy, but for like it's not this high powered like kid boy fantasy. That's right. That's what all that stuff kind of feels like to me. Like, no offense, but all the modern Brandon Sanderson stuff and the way it looks and feels and gets consumed and regurgitated out back to me at YouTube. I'm like, I don't know, like this. I don't know. This is it. Like, I don't know what he did in this book. What a confusing, weird book. But
yeah, but that's what fantasy is. It's this phantasmagoria, dreamlike state. No, dude. I have not read this one, guys, but this is on my to-do list at some point. Let me see. There's a lot of tangents I could go here, so I'm gonna just rattle off a few and not talk about them too much. But let me just do some short story collections. I went on and on about Salinger and talked a bunch about Hemingway, and there's some other guys. But every single one of them is reading Ring Lardner. Ring Lardner didn't write novels. He was actually a sports writer, newspaper writer, who also did short stories. He gets compared to O. Henry. O. Henry gets way more literary love. Ring Lardner is supposed to just be, popcorn pulp nonsense, but yet every important writer ever seems to have, and every important American writer of the 20th century seems to have read Ring Lardner. So I did too, and yeah. Ring stories.
These guys' names like Erskine Caldwell, Ring Lardner. Yeah,
they're rich. Let me see. Don't have enough females on here, but one of the ones that does make my, I don't mean to say it like that, God bless. But one of the ones that has come across my radar and I've been a big fan of is Catherine Ann Porter. This specific story collection is just one of several that she has, but this one's Flowering Judas. Her short stories, an easy comparison, but a lazy comparison is Flannery O'Connor, who's another 40s, 50s female writer who can hang with the big boys or whatever. But like, I don't want to paint them in that sort of conciliatory picture, because they're powerful writers. They're especially great at short story writing, specifically longer short stories. But Catherine Ann Porter has her own kind of great 40s version of feminism, which, isn't around, much in vogue these days. But I feel like she has a certain power with it. She has these kind of neo-Western type things where it's got all these Western tropes, but it's not guys with guns on hats and stuff. It's like a guy and a girl in a bar room or something. But yet it feels so turn of the century, feels so frontier, feels so, no rules or that kind of thing. And so I don't know. She's powerful. Let me see. I felt like I had one other short story collection here I wanted to talk about. Oh, two more. So as long as we're getting to the root and the source and the heart of things, these two guys. These two guys are people that I slept on in high school and college. Maybe had to read them in survey class or read a short story of theirs in like English 3 or something. But I never paid attention to it and ignored it, which was a foolish thing for me to do. Because Bret Hart and Ambrose Bierce are absolute master pro stylists, and Bret Hart is a super influence on, a lot of these people, especially Ambrose Bierce, who is a contemporary and buddy of his. But Bret Hart and Ambrose Bierce are both influential hugely on Oakley Hall, and so
are they right before Twain?
They're contemporaries of Twain.
Contemporaries, okay.
Yep. Bierce is just maybe a year or two younger. Hart's a few years older. But they write together in San Francisco. Hart dies early. Of course, Bierce has his own weird, wacky death story. Disappears into Mexico. But Bierce does some horror stuff. But they both are kind of Western writers. Not hardcore Western, but frontier, gold prospecting, that kind of thing. And They're like I said about Oakley Hall, just this perfect merging of realism and romanticism, using diction, using syntax, giving this American voice that is distinct from this English or continental voice. If you want to write, good stuff, you want to be Cormac McCarthy, you don't just go read Cormac McCarthy. It's not going to get you there, guys. You got to go read this stuff. Yeah. Okay, your turn, Brady. My bad. I'll also just throw in Jack London because he's also a contemporary with them. He's a little younger than these guys, but he does know Bierce and Twain. He doesn't get to meet Hart because Hart dies, but they're all influential on Jack London, who takes it to a more naturalist pitch and gives a little more about survival, has a little more Nietzsche influence, but he's part of that same school of thought.
Well, thank you for seeing Nietzsche and also talking about American short stories, because I didn't pull them off the shelf here. But yeah, if I had to recommend something, Conan the Barbarian. If I could talk about more Texans, by Robert E. Howard, right? So I love Conan stories. They're short stories, so they're exactly in that same sort of tradition that we're sort of exploring here for a lot of these guys in a sense. And yeah, as far as distinctly American, it does just have that high octane, intravenous testosterone, it's just so good. It's Conan the Barbarian, the literary character is so much different than the Arnold Schwarzenegger Conan, because Arnold Schwarzenegger Conan is just, I'm Conan, he's all bronze. Yeah, he's a meathead. But this Conan is he's still savage fighter, but he's also introspective and philosophical, and there's this whole interplay between the conversation of barbarian versus savage versus civilization, and that Conan is the barbarian, but he's not a savage, and that's contrasted also with the civilization. So he's always having these sort of conversations or one-offs or sort of foils with other characters or other concepts as it's going about, as of course always saving pale-skinned women, voluptuous women, right? So yeah, just excellent stuff. But I went to his house up in North Texas 2 years ago now, I guess.
Okay.
And I went there with my wife, and bringing it back to the short story concept that I wanted to bring it up to is that his dad was like a traveling surgeon and a doctor, so that's how we probably got to see a lot of gore and stitchings up, and I think also people just got maimed in general, maybe out there too as well. But so that maybe influenced some of his literal experience about being able to write awesome battle scenes and blade biting sinew and the shoulder hacked
biography in the literature,
and that also. But one of his other big things is that his dad's him and his dad's friends. And his dad they would sit around in the parlor room and they would do these things called the Windies. And it would just be this short storytellings and back and forth. And they would all just try to one-up, their crazy stories. But, it'd make it up on the spot and have to be sort of improv. And apparently Howard started, very precocious storyteller or whatever. So he eventually...
naturally influenced by it.
Yeah, but, kind of grew up in this environment. But, once again, the biography and the literature, we can kind of see how a lot of that stuff goes out. Even with the philosophy of the civilization and barbarian... He's a contemporary of Lovecraft, and they actually have letter conversations about that stuff. So even if, let's say if Robert E. Howard's name fell off this, it's like if we had to trace back, it'd be like, hey, I can totally see these conversations. I can totally see where they're getting this stuff. Oh, it's in the biography. They're short stories, blah, 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 yada, yada, right? So not that this is an authorship question, but I'm saying, once again, it's oozing with the biography of the person that wrote it in a sense. So I love reading Conan stories because they could be quick. They've got a lot of little personal charm and flair to them, and they're of their time period for sure. But I can't get enough. Oh, there it is, the Robert E. Howard Museum flyer that I still have in here. Robert E. Howard, Conan the Barbarian, all that other stuff too. I haven't read Solomon Kane yet. I have it up here. Got one of his noir stories too, or he's got a pulp crime, couple of pieces that he wrote.
Interesting. Yeah, I still got to read Oakley's pulp crime, So Many Doors. Okay, we can probably start calling it soon, but just gonna rattle off a few quick ones. Got a lot of white dudes here, right? This isn't. Once again, this isn't a token pick purposefully to make it a token pick, although it is, I guess, a token pick, unfortunately, because I did not have my copy of Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. But Richard Wright's Native Son, I know some of you guys have probably seen it on book list, maybe you've touched it, maybe you haven't. This is one that I never touched because it was always kind of mandated book list, so it's like, I bet that's not even that good. No, this is earth-shatteringly good. This is Theodore Dreiser on crack. You don't have to read Theodore Dreiser. You don't have to do an American Tragedy. You can just read Native Son. Native Son has this whole extra lens of race and class, along with, just the bullshit of the American dream that can rot and fetter your soul. But yeah, Native Son it's the realist. It's so psychologically, sharp and cutting that it makes you shiver, but at some point it turns it into a philosophical discussion and shows why this is happening, and it does it at this incredibly calculated and deliberate attempt to critique capitalism, critique America's specific version of capitalism, and to do all that while just telling the struggles of a young black teenager in the 1940s in Chicago. Wow. Richard Wright wrote a lot of other novels, and some of them I've touched and are pretty great, but none of them are like Native Son. Native Son's its own thing. It's super powerful. Nelson Algren, A Walk on the Wild Side. This is the guy that all those 60 guys are reading and figuring out how to write those unbelievably cool sentences. Let me see. You guys over at Right Conscious are pretty familiar with Yukio Mishima. I'm not the biggest fan of this, but it's something that I make myself read because he himself has his own brand of minimalism, and the power of description. It's uncanny. So this book's, simultaneously about all these things and about nothing, and he's doing it through this constant use of description. Let me see. Nathaniel West, who was a protege of F. Scott Fitzgerald, he only really wrote 2 novels, and they always get bound together, Miss Lonely Hearts and The Day of the Locust. Specifically, I want to talk about Day of the Locust because, I don't know, this was the book that made me realize you don't have to be the greatest ever. Like, yeah, we all want to be Shakespeare. We all want to be, the guy that unseats Hemingway or Salinger for the great American novel. But, like, even if you don't, if you just write Day of the Locust, that's enough to, like, die on that cross. Like, Day of the Locust is, got a similar kind of feel to Gatsby, but instead of it being about jazz age New York, it's about late 30s or early 40s Hollywood. And it's totally this apocalyptic vision of this, kid that goes to Hollywood. And I don't know if you've seen like David Lynch's Mulholland Drive. It's that kind of tone, not that kind of method or discussion exactly, but that kind of condemnatory tone of apocalyptic tone of Hollywood. Let me see. I'm gonna give it back to Brady here in a second. I just kind of want to rattle through mine and just be done with it. I'm a crazy person. I gotta mention. Before I do, let me just mention these. Jim Crace's Quarantine. This is one of the few books that I have that's from the last few decades. I think it's from the 90s, maybe early 2000s. It's nowhere near as lyrical or beautiful or I don't even know if profound as some of these books. It's not as classic as some of these books. But it is the most memorable book I've ever read. I read it once, read it just randomly. I've seen his name on some lists of best British authors, modern British authors. It's about people wandering into the desert in Jesus' era, and including Jesus as one of the characters. Its specific take on the historical Jesus is totally cartoonish, and any believing Christian will hate it. But it's not necessarily some kind of pander to the atheist crowd either. It somehow totally reestablishes the Christian perspective by the end, and I'm a non-Christian person. And but yeah, it's about all these Jewish people going out into the desert to fast, to cleanse themselves for 40 days and 40 nights, and all these people are not eating during the day and only drinking water, and then at night they'll eat some flatbread, and that's their cleansing. But this one character, who's not even the main character, he's kind of a side character, this one guy, Jesus, he's going to go to the darkest cave and the one that's near the hottest part of the desert but gets the coldest at night, and he's not going to eat or drink anything for 40 days. And the main character is this one regular guy that just beats his wife the whole time. But the Jesus character doesn't eat or doesn't drink and fucking dies, and or seemingly dies. And they're just like, yeah, that guy was fucking nuts, dude. Why would you do that? Like, why in God's name would you ever want to do that? And then, they all go back cleansed and maybe learn something about themselves and had their own little traumas during this thing. But as they're walking back, this figure, all totally emaciated figures, stutteringly walking towards them, and this they go to help it, and then the wind blows and they don't see the figure anymore, and it's like, what? But it was totally that Jesus dude, and it's like, what? But yeah, unbelievably memorable. So at some point, it doesn't matter how beautiful your writing is, if it's not memorable, nobody cares. And just wanted to say something. For whatever reason, it is glued itself to my brain more than maybe any other novel for whatever reason. Okay, but I gotta give a shout out to my two boys here, Raymond Chandler and Philip K. Dick. I could have picked any of the novels of theirs, but I picked The Long Goodbye and The Man in the High Castle. Those are probably their most classic. The Long Goodbye being Chandler's last and longest, probably most epic. Some people probably would find some of this stuff contrived and even silly or puerile. But his description of the land, his ethos for the Marlowe character, it's unbelievable. Philip K. Dick, if you're not ready to have your mind bent, then just don't read it. But if you like tripping out, if you like thinking about crazy sci-fi things and the actual implications of it, not just sci-fi pulp garbage, then Philip K. Dick is your god. But Man in the High Castle is actually not really a sci-fi story. It's speculative history. it's what if the Axis powers had won World War II, and at some point it's not even this kind of look at what would that be like. What it is a sort of political discussion to make you realize like it's all two sides of the same coin, and didn't really matter which side won. The fact is you are the Axis powers no matter who you are, and no matter who wins.
Probably a little too poignant for today's conversation.
Yeah. You know, to quote Back to the Future, you know, we're not ready for that. Maybe your kids will be or something. Okay, and then maybe last but not least, some both of these are poets, maybe more famous for being poets, but they both wrote. Well, Dickey wrote 3 novels, but really only one stands out, and Plath only wrote the 1 novel. But both of these people were incredibly powerful and really good poets. But when they put their mind to it for a novel, Deliverance, about 4 regular dudes going camping. Yes, this is the movie Deliverance. If you've seen the movie Deliverance, that's what the novel is. The novel's better. The movie's good. But the novel's unbelievably good. Just lends it kind of a suburban, modern suburban take on the Jack London discussion, and realizing we can't land on that Call of the Wild side like we used to. We're a little softer than we used to be, and I don't know. James Dickey's so incredibly in control of language that he is the best on the planet for describing a heightened situation. And I'm going to go into this for 1 second because this is an actual craft talk thing. Anybody that's written fiction, you write your description, you write your dialogue, you can pace it how you want. But when you get to a tense situation, you got to make it quick, right? But you also got to describe every detail because it's a heightened situation. But how can you do both? How can you be quick and describe every detail? How can you give us a perfect image vision of what's happening, but also give us the sort of lens of the main character who can't see all of it that's happening because it's all happening so quick, but still let us know what's happening while still being lyrical and descriptive? How do you make that happen? Well, if you are struggling with that in your writing, folks, go read James Dickey. Go read Deliverance, or even go read his other novel, To the White Sea. It's not a great novel. The first 70 pages are mind-blowing. After that, it's a long slog on a train ride through the Siberia, and it's not really worth a damn. But those first 70 pages when he's in Hiroshima for the bombing, I digress. But seriously, folks, it made me realize that poetry mattered. This book, and then reading James Dickey's poetry, it made me realize that's how you do that. If you're constantly working with the condensation, the contraction, the emulsion of words and syntax, then you're going to have more control when it needs to be pinpoint accurate. So thank you for letting me rattle that off, guys. That's James Dickey. I'll let Brady do one more, then I'll come back with my last 2. That'll be it for me. Or last 3, that'll be it for me.
Philip's asking for more conspiracy books, so I probably will deliver here.
Okay.
And Martin also said, yeah, Philip K. Dick is a boss. Yeah, I did. I was referencing stuff from Time Out of Joint a few videos ago. As Martin was mentioning, I'm going to mention I, Claudius. If you guys read it, then you can equally read the equally profound Claudius the God.
Martin, if you dug I, Claudius, check out, what is Margaret's book? I forget her last name because it's a French name that starts with a Y, but she has a book on one of the Roman emperors. Give me a second, guys. I'm going to just Wikipedia this because I've only read, first 70 pages of it, but it's mind-blowing. Marguerite. Thank you. Marguerite Yourcenar. She was a Belgian author, born in 1903, died in 1987. But her most famous book is called Memoirs of Hadrian, which took her 30 years to write or something. Because she just studied Hadrian. And then she just, apparently he had real memoirs in real life, but they're lost, and so she wrote them. And people are like, wait, like, you know, what I say about Warlock, about the immersion. They say that there's some level of immersion, like you actually feel like you're in Rome. Like every other thing that you thought you were in Rome for turned into some bad HBO show, right? Which that is not a pot shot at Rome, the HBO show, which I kind of actually like, but you know, season 2 is bad Rome HBO show. Anyway, but yeah, Memoirs of Hadrian. There's also John Williams' Augustus. So John Williams wrote one of those, I Claudius kind of novels. But yeah, Robert Graves is the one that started that little kind of mini subgenre. I have not read I Claudius. I got it on my shelf. I got Claudius the God on my shelf.
Give me a copy of it too.
And I also have Count Belisarius on my shelf. I've just, from everyone that likes all the books that I like, they've recommended those books, not unlike you, Martin. And so I trust that when I do get around to it, I'm gonna love it. Yeah, that was my old copy. I got a newer, updated copy when I was working at the bookstore, so I gave Brady my old copy. Yeah, Memoirs of Hadrian. There you go. Please do, because apparently that's another one on Goodreads that was like Warlock. It's one of these 50s books that like has a 4.5 or something on Goodreads, which is just like unheard of. Okay. Let me see. Do you have any more conspiracy books?
Well, it's kind of literature, so I'm maybe cheating here. I don't think he even likes this term, but From Hell. Now, yeah, Watchmen was I first read Watchmen in high school, and I was like, wow, this is great. This is actually what comics can do, This is actually like literary comics, right?
Yep.
And then my brother had gotten V for Vendetta, and he was like, dude, this is pretty good. And I read V for Vendetta, and I was like, whoa, this is just as good as Watchmen. This is crazy. I didn't know anything could match Watchmen. Yep. And then I remember seeing this was black and white, and I was like, I'm not going to touch
it. Yeah. I did the same thing. Like, literally in that same exact order.
Yeah. And then sometime later, you picked it up, and you read it, and you're like, dude, you gotta read this. This is better than Watchmen. And I was like, I don't think so, dude. Like, just calm down. And I went and read it, and it's better than Watchmen. Like this book, or this thing.
Like maybe I can talk about it for a second, because I didn't put it in my bag to put on my stack here to talk about because it's such a big book. But I have my own copy at home, and so I had known about this book for a while. This was they
made a movie at it back in 2007. 6, 7? 4?
No, it was earlier, 2002 or 3.
Okay.
Yeah, starring Johnny Depp
and Ian Holmes.
Yeah, and apparently it's not very good.
No, it's nothing like this. It's only basically a name.
The Hughes brothers did it. The guys that did Book of Eli and also did Menace to Society. Yeah, I don't know. Book of Eli, Menace to Society are probably a little better than From Hell. Anyway, but my little own spiel about From Hell, it was something of a religious experience. This was the summer of 2016. Brady didn't live with me at that time. My roommate Jamie was off in Colorado on vacation. It was just me at the house. I was off on summer from teaching, and so like off on summer, that means I get to read. And so I had been, reading some books. I was starting to dabble in Shakespeare, wasn't totally into it yet, so I'm still reading my novels. And kind of put some novels down, and one night I had a dream about Jack the Ripper. And I had this dream about Jack the Ripper, and in the Jack the Ripper dream, it was like I was trying to solve the Jack the Ripper mystery, which I'm not a Jack the Ripper guy. I have absolutely really no opinion on Jack the Ripper. I was not even a fan of it. It's just a random dream, and it's because me and my roommate had been playing a board game where you're trying to solve these Jack the Ripper mysteries, but we hadn't even played it recently. It's just something we'd played months previous, but just the random night I had this Jack the Ripper dream, and in the Jack the Ripper dream, it was like I had to get this book to solve the mystery. And so I literally woke up that morning, and in my brain I was like, oh, Alan Moore's From Hell, that's the book. That's the book that'll solve the mystery, which is total dream logic. Who cares? I'm awake now. But I literally got in my car and went to the comic store, Non's Comic Shops in Houston, drove all the way to basically downtown Houston from the suburbs, which is 40 minutes, drove there, bought a copy of it, went home, immediately sat down on the couch and read it cover to cover for like 16 hours straight.
Yeah, once I opened it,
into the darkness, into the next night, and then closed it. I've only done that with a handful of books, including Lot 49. But yeah, I've never had a dream to go buy a book, and when I read it, it's like, oh, the book was almost speaking about the dream. Like the book is itself unraveling the mystery of Jack the Ripper, and it's going into all this deep connected history, and he's using actual factual history to build this story, and he gives you this unbelievably compelling, dark, sinister story, and you expect this whodunit, and it's not a whodunit. You know whodunit from the start, and you just watch it unravel and happen, and yet it's this mystery for you to solve still, and somehow giving you the answer while still giving you a mystery. That was its own magic trick, and yeah, Alan Moore is super powerful. I also could have brought his Cave of Fire, which is a novel / short story collection where each chapter is a different period in British history, and it goes forward, and none of the characters are really connected, so that's why it's short stories, but because it is building chronologically through British history, it is kind of a novel. And there's one particular short story in that one that absolutely floored me, and it's about this guy that works for the Roman Empire in 300 AD, and he has to go out to Britain because apparently people have been counterfeiting coins, and there's all this talk that Rome's falling and Rome's going to fall, and he's so sick of it, and he has to just go fix it and uphold these values, and he's tired of being treated like crap at the same time, and has his own animosity towards the empire. But he goes out there and he's trying to deal with these country bumpkins and their horrible counterfeiting ways, and he realizes that while he's weighing out their counterfeiting to see how they're counterfeiting, his own stash of money is worth less than the stuff that is known counterfeit. And that's when he realizes the whole entire currency of the entire money market of Rome is completely counterfeit. And I don't know, that was this really powerful...
Yeah, Rome has already fallen.
Yeah. Let me see. Okay, my bad.
Well, yeah, I was in the middle. But yeah, From Hell, yeah, it's like he was already saying, it's just like this Jack the London thing, which, once again, Jack the London did not care about that crime at all, right? Or Jack the Ripper from London, but yeah, did not care about the crime whatsoever. But yeah, he makes you care, and gets you, and he has all these footnotes in the back, which makes it super interesting. And he kind of talks about why certain scenes and certain things are framed certain ways. He's like, well, this person said this, or we read this police log about this thing, and I have all these different Jack the Books murderer things open, and I compared all the different ones to figure out which sort of version to kind of land on. And talk about that immersion. Yeah, the way he captures the Victorian English language, and you really just feel like a fly on the wall, hearing these people talk and showing all the, the squalor and the sort of terrible living conditions.
Yeah,
and all that sort of stuff.
all the class warfare.
Yeah. But and there's also the spooky stuff about the creepy stuff embedded in the London architecture.
Yeah,
and
the
how
secret
all that
society stuff, and I mean, there's literally a whole chapter. It's at chapter 3 or 4 where it's literally just a guy going around a stagecoach looking at London architecture, talking about how Nicholas Wren designed these through Masonic stuff. Like, there's no actual action or plot happening. It's almost like literally wiki dumping, but it's like one of the greatest chapters Alan Moore ever wrote.
And to bring it back to something that Philip just said in the chat, because it's all based on this book here, Jack the Ripper: The Final Solution by Stephen Knight, and he was the one who put it all together as far as fingering William Gould, I think that's his name, is the guy who did it essentially. This royal surgeon guy, and he traced through all these newspaper clippings, sort of like we're going like, hey, wait a second, from a long time ago. And then all of a sudden he died at age 33 of crazy brain cancer. So make of it what you will, I guess. He wrote another book sort of exposing Masonic rituals and other stuff like that. So that makes sense why he connects this Masonic sort of web network of
just on that note, Brady, we categorically deny any conspiracies for any government agencies that are listening, including who my brother works for.
But also to keep on from hell, the From Hell. Oh no, yeah, the
We've
From
gone
Hell.
dark. We're still talking, guys. Keep listening.
The From Hell Companion is another one that Chance got me actually, and it is here I can actually throw it up here on the screen while I get the last minutes of the stream going. The From Hell Companion is basically this little behind the scenes. Let's see, behind the scenes look about how Alan Moore basically did his screenplay.
Almost the
format.
making of, right?
Yeah, but he'll kind of write about what he wrote out and how Campbell got it onto the page there, essentially, right?
Right.
My camera's glitching out. Let me pull up here for the audience while I also fix my camera. I'll go to give Google some clicks. So yeah, this is the book I'm talking about here, the From Hell Companion. And yeah, it was just really interesting being able to see how he would, because I was interested in doing a graphic novel at one point. But yeah, it was nice that he would, actually have what he, one panel this, or this one page is segmented into 9 perfect or 9 squares, or one long square, 3 this many. So it's nice and broken down.
I too had read some. They're not called screenplays. I forget what they're called. Comic plays or whatever. His script for what the comic will be. Not all comic book writers are like this, but Moore is incredibly deliberate, very much I want to see this, I want to see this. There's other guys that, let the artist have way more artistic license, but Alan Moore has the vision himself. He just probably can't draw as well as other folks. I think he draws a little bit. But yeah, I want to say maybe it's the V for Vendetta script I've read. Maybe it's Watchmen. I forget which it is. But yeah, he has whole paragraphs saying what that one panel needs to look like. Let's see. While Brady's getting this stuff up, I'll just rattle off the last few of my books. While we have stuffy 1950s authors, let me go ahead and throw some Richard Yates on the fire. Richard Yates wrote Revolutionary Road, which got turned into a indie movie from 2008 or something by Sam Mendes, starring Leo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet. And it was a nice little dramatic movie, if not hyper dramatic. But something was incredibly lost in that movie, probably because this book is almost 500 pages long, and that movie's an hour and a half or 2 hours or something. This book is just about being married in the 50s, and being mildly unhappy about it, and that sounds like the least interesting thing ever, and especially white bread people. But it's unbelievably well written, fascinating, heart wrenching. I read it as a freshman in college, and then I reread it again in my late 20s, and it was still powerful. And Richard Yates is another master pro stylist. And while we're on master pro stylists, let me give a shout out to the real Faulkner. So I said Erskine Caldwell may be kind of the real Faulkner, but this guy even more so. This guy's named Andrew Little. He's a dude from Tennessee. Like Erskine Caldwell, I guess he's also a raging racist, and maybe even worse than Erskine, maybe actual KKK type dude. So, grain of salt when you go pick this up. But this book is called The Velvet Horn. It is Andrew Little's magnum opus novel. He was a minor writer out of Tennessee in the 40s and 50s. When Faulkner's trying to do all these little language games, and Faulkner's trying to do a stream of consciousness and do a Southern Gothic thing and get Shakespearean and all that kind of stuff, Faulkner sometimes is able to do it. I honestly think he is, but not always. I don't have any Faulkner on this table for a reason. He can be powerful. I'm not going to sit here and crap on him. But I feel like Faulkner always loses the forest for the trees. Faulkner always thinks he's smarter than he is. And I feel like everybody else thinks Faulkner's smarter than he is. Meanwhile, nobody even knows who Andrew Little is. This is actually that smart. Just let me see if I can just, I'll just randomly Pick a page. Brady, give me a number between 1 and 74.
69.
Okay. Okay. Jack pulled himself upright in his chair. The balance of nature is restored, madam. Let us together re-enter the natural world. La, Mr. Jack, you gone and got my baby boy drunk as a coot. For shame, a big growed man taking advantage. And she pulled Awful to his feet, shaking him and patting him and giving him back the rifle. Now go sit down until your toes can grip the ground again. Awful looked back at his mother questioningly. She shook her head. Mammy'll not let nothing bother you. He began to cry. Soothingly she said, Mammy'll not let it get it. Jack watched Othel depart, dragging the gun as a child drags a toy, wobbling like a child not sure of his feet. With a hearty voice, standing now, appearing almost sober, he addressed Lucius, although he looked straight at Ada Rudder. Give her a repeat for solace, son. Ada did not bat an eye. You're right, kind Mr. Cropley, and I don't care if I do. This here's an awful dry family I got, and you so free and all with your liquor. I hope you got a still working for you somewheres. She took off her drink. The very manner of it, swallowing it down like water, and this time without putting any water in it, gave the one gesture to show what unsure grounds Jack's ruse rested upon. And, I could go on like this, but it's all very smooth flowing, but at times very dense, very poetic, especially the Uncle Jack character. He can just wax Falstaffian. It's unbelievable, and nobody on the planet seems to know about it. So, go check out The Velvet Horn. All the thorns with it, all its nasty racial thorns and elitist thorns with it, but it's powerful prose. But the most powerful prose stylist of all these people, the god himself, the one that I guess I have to put at the top of the pinnacle, the one that every Ambrose Bierce and every Bret Hart was wanting to be, and then everybody else copied after. I guess the Shakespeare of America for me is Thomas Wolfe. Does he have the most heart-wrenching prose ever? Yes. Is it the most interesting novel ever? Probably not. Every one of his novels is memoir-esque, and it's all coming of age, and it's all very autobiographical, but nobody writes sentences like this, and this is the guy that Faulkner said is actually the most talented writer America's ever made. He too dies tragically early, but he puts out a bunch of novels, like 6 of them or something. But let me see if I can find it. If I can, I won't force it here. But some of the sentences that old Tom Wolfe can do. It's incredible, and he's a big influence on King Casey. He's a big influence on Jim Thompson. He's a big influence on pretty much everybody. Let me see. Okay, yeah, this isn't the sentence I wanted, but this will work. This will get the idea across. So this is the mother character. Eliza came through stolidly to victory. As she marched down these enormous years of love and loss, stained with the rich dyes of pain and pride and death, and with the great wild flare of his alien and passionate life, her limbs faltered in the grip of ruin, but she came on through sickness and emaciation to victorious strength. She knew there had been glory in it. Insensate and cruel as he had often been, she remembered the enormous beating color of his life, the lost and stricken thing in him which he would never find. And fear and a speechless pity rose in her when at times she saw the small uneasy eyes grow still and darken with the foiled and groping hunger of old frustration. Oh, lost. Just so fluid, so poetic. Some people might call it purple, but I would call them illiterate churls. Because this is beautiful. It's poetic. Some of his just one-line metaphors. I'll turn it back over to Brady, and I'll keep searching for the quote I'm looking for.
All right, Philip, here's another one for you. I pulled this one off earlier because, like I said, I'm trying to explain more of this background or this framework for the channel, and the idea of even just the interplay between consciousness and cognition, and I know we've sort of gone down the language cognition route, but yeah, it's terms of just like how all that stuff fits in. Especially I like the precedents for mind control, propaganda, and the like. And so yeah, I have this book called The CIA Doctors by Colin A. Ross, and it's by originally published as Bluebird: Deliberate Creation of Multiple Personality by Psychiatrists. So yeah, this guy was a psychologist and or psychiatrist, and much of the MK Ultra black budget terrible experiments that they did on people. I'm talking like hook people to a bed and cover your eyes and mouths and pump you full of insulin for like 40 days straight just to see what happens to you, or put you in a room, or you go in for depression and then some doctor puts you in a room with a bunch of red lights and they beam, noises at you like, days on end just to try to like, you didn't know that you were getting signed up for a psychological experiment essentially. But yeah, tons of crazy things that they did to people, terrible things. But yeah, how it was also published in like mainstream academic journals. You could go in like, some of that stuff was kind of kept out, the people's names, and some of the more sordid details were able to be sort of underplayed or whatever. But yeah, this guy just goes and pieces through a bunch of it, a bunch of that stuff, and you're able to kind of read the things that they did to people, and also this wicked web of money through, not just government funding, so using taxpayer money to fund this stuff, but then also setting up all these cutouts and fronts for organizations to do and start all these experiments as well, that are just CIA cutouts and other military intelligence cutouts, and then it becomes almost like a double embezzling, because then the government matches like private organization funds for certain things, and so it's just disgusting like how this whole biomedical establishment and military industrial complex will fund stuff to do to unsuspecting people, and then get turned around and get funneled all that research up until what I would argue until people that do advertisements, people that make chemicals that make fizzy drinks, that taste sweet. There's so many things that are aspects to the human mind that can be exploited, and so much of this stuff I just find, we can find it in the MK Ultra experiments that has been admitted by the government that they did do all this nasty stuff to people, that they were very much interested in, like, controlling dopamine, controlling, and monitoring, and figuring out triggers for people and all that sort of stuff. And I feel like we're sort of living in that world that's very much inundated with all that sort of stuff and piloted by dopamine in a sense, and like we don't have to go into the crazy Manchurian candidate, I erased your brain and made you go do that stuff, and that stuff's definitely in here. Like that's also should be suspect, but it's more of like how it could even just be applied on a soft level, on a mass level to people as well, and how it can be done through film and literature and that sort of stuff I mentioned in Flickr maybe. But yeah, CIA, the CIA Doctors by Colin A. Ross.
Hell yeah. Found that quote real quick. So Thomas Wolfe's Look Homeward Angel. Okay. If I had known, said Eliza, and then, I'm sorry. But he knew that her sorrow at that moment was not for him or for herself or even for the boy whom idiot chance had thrust in the way of pestilence, but that with a sudden inner flaming of her clairvoyant Scotch soul, she had looked cleanly, without pretense for the first time, upon the inexorable tides of necessity, and that she was sorry for all who had lived, were living, or would live, fanning with their prayers their useless altar flames, suppliant with their hopes to an unwitting spirit, casting the tiny rockets of their belief against remote eternity, and hoping for grace, guidance, and delivery upon the spinning and forgotten cinder of this earth. Oh, lost. That was one sentence, folks. Like, oh, God. Like, yeah. Some point, don't read Thomas Wolfe. You read Thomas Wolfe, you won't write. There's no point. You don't have to. He's already done it. Like, that said, if you do really want to be masterful prose stylist, go read Thomas Wolfe. I think that covers my books, Braid. Make sure I didn't miss any. You got some more? You can keep going.
I think the only last one I'll maybe mention, because I had a couple more in this pile, but I think one, I know this one's sort of already pitched out ad nauseum for, modern literature, This is probably one of the few ones that on here that is a little more of recent. But House of Leaves is sort of a famous one. I mean, this guy's definitely reading stuff like Pale Fire. That's definitely where he's getting these ideas from. I don't know who's first. I don't know if Foster Wallace or Daniel Lusky is first, but they're right on top of one another.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so 2001 or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, House of Leaves, what a wacky book. People will say it's like, oh, it's so complicated. It's not that complicated. It's not like David Foster Wallace's where you have to like flip to the back for all those stupid annotations where it's going to be, they're actually like all at the bottom or it's like built in much easier.
Okay.
But yeah, it's much in that same style of like, it's having this conversation about what academia does as far as, it's actually poking fun at that because the novel itself is like, they have a found footage style of movie. Well, this is like a found book of a sort. So it's like you're reading someone's dissertation thesis paper that's about a film, but it's all been compiled by some editor who's also leaving his own notes as you're reading this dissertation that's by some other dead dude or whatever. So yeah, it's like a story within a story doing that whole trip or whatever.
Yeah.
But it gets, it's definitely got a mood where the whole setup is, these people move into this house and like weird stuff starts happening and like I don't even want to spoil anything beyond that. Because I was already spoiled some of it going into it, but I want people to go into this like
blank.
Don't know anything about it, just read it. But yeah, what a rewarding book. I super love it. It does like a bunch of wacky stuff here where the text is like, I don't know if the camera can really see it, but yeah, it's just kind of like
it's
blank
sideways.
and it's sideways and it does like kind of different stuff throughout House of Leaves, you can probably find plenty of other YouTubers that will talk about it, but I'm just going to put my stamp of approval that I thoroughly enjoyed this book and got me into even if it's like gateway literature about thinking about, wow, this is what we can really do with like alternate ways of storytelling, because one chapter in here, it's part of the dissertation and much of it's pretty straight, clear cut, but there's one chapter in here, this dissertation paper, where he starts going into this overly like pedantic explanation of like sound properties and like what sound equations do and all this sort of stuff, and then all of a sudden he just mic drops and he's like, now imagine if you're like in this place and I don't want to spoil too much, but imagine if you're like in this dark place where there's like no light. Now what happens if there's to sound if there's like no light or proper orientation of a sun to be had for all this phenomenon to essentially happen, and you're like, oh no, and like you're talking about this sort of creepy stuff going on inside this house, but once again, you just skim it, he's obviously being like obtuse and like overly wordy and overdoing the parlance like on purpose or whatever. But yeah, that was a really great delivery when he kind of did that whole thing, and it's kind of horror. That's what people pitch that it's like a horror book, and yeah, that's definitely in there, but it's more than that too, So yeah, House of Leaves by Mark Z. Daniel Lusky.
Right on. One book in my sec that I didn't mention, E.L. Doctorow's Ragtime. Doctorow's one that Harold Bloom calls one of the great 20th century master stylists, along with just master novelists, along with Pynchon, DeLillo, and Saul Bellow. Bellow's aight, DeLillo's shite, but Doctorow's the real deal. All his stuff's historical fiction. Ragtime's is probably most accessible, but even that one maybe gets a little tough for some people to read. But Ragtime itself is that kind of... It's got all sorts of famous characters from turn of the century New York. Freud's in it. Houdini's in it. J.P. Morgan's in it. And they're all these kind of side characters that clash with, or not clash with, but kind of just, intermingle with the lives of our main character family. And it's all just these interactions and different episodes in New York, and really, really accessibly written. But then some of his other stuff, like it's yet another, historical novel, but each book is its own stylistic attempt, and so each book reads real different than the last book. So Billy Bathgate's like totally in 1920s speak, totally 1920s syntax, whereas this one is much more like it's much more like O. Henry turn of the century kind of thing. and he has such a good grip on style that he can just emulate these different eras of writing time. And that said, don't read everything by Doctorow. His City of God is a giant pile of dog crap. But he's not doing historical fiction with that. It's his navel-gazing book.
Martin, that's funny. I wrote a book called "This Book is Full of Spiders" that promised the spider in my brain would readjust itself as I slept for having read the book, and that I would feel it, and I did.
Successful book.
Yeah.
Let me see. Yep, that's it on my end.
I'll just rattle off some like honorable mentions here. I already mentioned it, I think, in a live stream a long time ago in an episode, but The Long Ships by Franz G. Benson. I don't know if Hyperborean knowledge is still on the stream, but if you want some good old Viking romp where it's pretty much just an amalgamation of a bunch of different sagas slapped into like one character, and you get some historical vignettes, and it's kind of cool, and just read the Viking action history. It's fun. It's just a good time. Like,
okay.
You just want to have a fun time, and just be able to see some. You'll see. I think you see Harold Bluetooth in there and some other stuff, but interesting. And then another book. I haven't read this yet, but I've been interested in it, and maybe this is dusty Victorian. More of that sort of same stuff. Maybe this is actually before the Long
Tom
Ships.
Shippey. Okay.
Yeah. So this is edited by him.
Yeah.
So this is his Uppsala books. I've got his like Woden book right there, and I've mentioned Stephen Pollington's. Okay. Oh no, this is not Pollington. This is edited. But yeah, Eric Brighteyes, first published in 1891, represents a new departure for Rider Haggard, best known for King Solomon's Mines. I keep forgetting he's the one who did that. King Solomon's Mines is Alan Quatermain. Set for the most part in the 10th century Iceland, it was praised by Tolkien for its heroic quality. It remains the best example of what was once a large and popular genre, the Victorian Viking novel. Unlike other works of this kind, however, though not unusually for Haggard, it is driven by female characters, combines scholarly authenticity with Haggard's own unique flair for the strange and supernatural. So, I haven't read this yet, but I've been wanting to try to see it or check it out. So, Eric Brighteyes by H. Rider Haggard.
Okay. I thought I'd heard that name before. Okay. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Go read some great novels. Like, I know it's hard with the day-to-day bluster and fluster of the 21st century job. But whether you're retired, whether you're working, whether you're in school, find some time to poke your head in a novel or even a short story collection or even some poetry. It will enrich your life. For you guys out there, part of that right conscious crowd, or just anybody looking at trying to get good at writing fiction, you want to go publish, guys, you got to read these authors. And this is just my, little culling of what I think will get you there the fastest, but don't just take my word for it. There's other authors out there. This is, and especially 1950s white dude list. But these are the guys that have mastered the English language and they can bend it to their will. They may not have had the ideas you want. And so if you got better ideas, take your better ideas, get their level of skill, get their level of craft, and then go run through the town wild. You'll have reign over all of us. And something me and Brady are trying to do, and it's not just these guys. You got to get deeper, and you got to go start reading your Sidney, start reading your Lilly, your Shakespeare, your Webster. Going deeper to Chaucer. Go read your Aeschylus. Go read your Plato. Go read your Empedocles, your Heraclitus, your Epicure, your
sagas.
Yeah, your sagas. Go read all of it, because that at some point cut straight to the source kind of thing. Okay, guys. That'll wrap it up. Thanks for tuning in.
And thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out. You guys tuning in live on the chat. It was awesome having you, Char. It was awesome having you for the first time, Nanya. You guys were excellent additions to this crowd. Tune in more. we're gonna come back with some Shakespeare stuff, specifically some Shakespeare authorship stuff, and the hopefully near soon, next few weeks here. Brady's got some more solo shots coming up. We're still doing book club. If you guys are interested in joining that, it's been awesome. We got 4 regulars. We've had some other semi-regulars pop in and out, and want to keep doing it. It's been awesome.
Yeah,
discussion.
if you want lifelong Discord access, just become a Patreon member for a month, and you'll get to come hang out with us on Discord. Or if you want to help us support us even more and come hang out more, we can do a book club with us, right?
And that said, specifically, book club has been Shakespeare, Elizabethan literature oriented to try and get folks a little more versed on, the Shakespeare scene. But it doesn't have to always be that way. And like I said, Shakespeare is only going to enrich your life, your reading, your writing. Yeah. I guess on that note, Brady, you got any last words?
No, I think we're good after that. Yeah, all the links down below in the description. Got my Patreon links, my Substack links, and Chance's Ghost Substack link that will eventually get out on there for the people.
It's coming, yeah, in utero.
But yeah, thanks so much for hanging out with us this evening. It's been a pleasure sharing all these books with you. But on that note, have a good evening, and nullius in verba, everyone.